Yeah, he would kill certain people. He would kill certain dudes that were popular with the women.
Right.
Just so they could have a funeral because he knew all the girls was going to come to the funeral.
Get out of here.
I'm telling you, I'm not. He would do stuff like that.
Just so that...
Like if you was a dude known with the hookers,
Right.
he may kill you just to bring them out for the funeral, and he'll come to the funeral real jazzy and book about 10, 15 of them hookers.
At the funeral.
That was off the hook out there, man.
For undisclosed reasons, our victim, who didn't know Wayne's face, got into it with Wayne and company. Harsh words were exchanged, and they pull into a parking lot where Wayne challenges him to a fight. Sensing it wouldn't be a fair scrap, the man declined. Wayne Perry draws a gun and forces the man to strip naked. After the indignifying act, Wayne shoots the man in the backside, making him limp away in agony. Wayne and company all break out laughing in this late-night show of crack-era sadism. No one knows if they finished the man off or not. Safe to assume he did, and all for a quick laugh, casual crack-era violence, and just another night in the life of DC's Grim Reaper. Before the name drops in rap lore, to friends, he was Silk, a smooth dresser and a ladies' man. To DC, he was the Grim Reaper, and to America, he was the Michael Jordan of murder. But how did DC's most feared menace go under the radar for years? Wayne Perry might be America's least documented serial killer, and often a side character in the Alpo Martinez story. Sadistic, quiet, and known for the kind of savagery that would make you wince. In the early 90s, Wayne Perry and company would drive around their stomping grounds in Southwest DC. They owned the city, and Wayne's name was already an urban legend in the hood. His name was discussed quietly and never to the cops. But what's the story of America's most unrecognized killer? Born in the projects of Southwest DC in November of 1962, a far cry from archetypal DC, at least the one you have pictured in your head. As a boy, Wayne spent a lot of time in Georgia, where people called him Boy a lot and would fight often, molding him into a quick-tempered young dude and acclimatizing young Wayne with violence. Back in DC, a young Wayne ran a crew of thugs who would steal purses from middle-aged women. His home life wasn't any better. His cousin was a credit card fraudster and encouraged him to stay in the streets. The same cousin would go on to coax him to committing his first murder. As the story goes, Wayne's cousin wanted a man dead, a partner that had double-crossed him to be exact. The plan was Wayne would do the job because the target would never suspect a kid. Wayne was surprisingly eager to do the hit, not to prove himself or anything, but just to kill someone. All Wayne asked in exchange was that if he could keep the gun, he wanted it to scare local kids and gain respect from his crew. In his hood, fear was power, and Wayne already understood this well. On the day of the hit, Wayne met up with his target, struck up a conversation, and asked for some ice cream. To get said ice cream, they had to go in a building, then down some stairs. Minutes later, the target had 3 shots in the back of his head, and Wayne took off running the way he came. Now sprinting away from the scene, Wayne noticed something odd. The shells were still in the gun. He got home crying like the plan had failed. In a panic, his cousin asked what happened. Wayne showed him the gun, and the 3 spent shells were still in the chamber. Now, by design, 22 revolver shells don't hit the ground, but a 14-year-old Wayne had no clue. He wasn't sad that he took a life. He was sad he didn't empty the whole clip. A monster at 14, and only getting started. On the streets, Wayne had graduated to hustling gamblers using sets of rigged dice and cards. He also grew an affinity for baseball bats and guns. Outside his love for the streets, Wayne's first passion was sports. At 6'3", Wayne went to Washington High School and made the baseball team, something he genuinely enjoyed until he was kicked off for beating the coach's head in with a baseball bat. Not long after, Wayne was banned from every public school in DC for shooting a hall monitor during a school riot. Wayne says he didn't do it, but everyone else says it was him, a precursor for his lifelong disdain for rats. To get his GED, Wayne would be sent to an alternative school, now at home with similar rowdy teens, more his crowd. Not long into his stay there, one of the teens threatened to smack Wayne and take his chain, a mortal sin and the ultimate violation in the hood. Not the victim type, Wayne got himself a gun, stalked his victim, and gunned him down one day in '78. Wayne got his taste for killing again and jumped off the porch for good this time. Fully immersed in the streets now, Wayne took up bank robbery and sticking up drug dens. Wayne had the skill set for this line of work, intimidating and fearless. Apparently, Wayne was too good at his job. His crew took his gun because he was too trigger happy. Wayne's little brother was killed by cops during one of these robberies in 1979. Wayne tried pushing weight after this, but quickly went back to his calling in extortion and murder. In 1984, a group of dudes new to the block in Southwest DC's projects were looking for an easy lick. A tall, skinny frame materialized down the street, and they thought they had their victim. They surrounded him, and one of them wrapped a chain around his neck. He fought back viciously. It turned into a brawl and spilled into the streets and got the nearby cops' attention. Hearing the siren, the mugging stopped. By the time the cops pulled up, the thugs were playing it cool, like nothing had happened, and Wayne had vanished. Out of nowhere, Wayne popped back up, baseball bat in hand this time. He fixed on the dude that had the chain wrapped around his neck and beat him to a bloody mess. The cops did nothing to stop him. Wayne disappeared again from where he came. Weeks later, his mother convinced him to turn himself in. Since he was attacked first, he was sentenced to 3 years on manslaughter. DC is a small town, and word gets around fast. So the legend of the DC Grim Reaper grew and held till he got out of jail. In the meantime, DC could breathe for a while, but only while he was gone. When he got out, Wayne's name still held weight. He attracted a crew of similar trigger-happy types. DC was awash with crack flooding from New York and had a huge market of fiends to sling to. Even the mayor was on crack once. But more than anything, the violence in DC's drug game set it apart from other cities. Even reputed gangsters refused to set up here. DC had a reputation for wiping out dealers for high prices. This was the hostility Wayne Perry thrived in. Wayne Perry was built for this life. Hundreds of murders were going unaccounted for, and DC was America's murder capital. Wayne became reputed for robbery, kidnapping, and extortion. He would extort thousands from just about anyone. No one was safe. Wayne turned his attention to killing crack dealers as a contract killer, and the murder rate spiked in '87. It turned out to be a lot more lucrative than extortion. He would go after other feared killers, if the price was right too, and distinctly to make a statement he wasn't scared to kill in front of other witnesses either. When people found out Wayne had killed someone, they knew they were too afraid to do anything. The DC Grim Reaper became untouchable in the hood, and untouchable by cops too. There was never any evidence and no one ever saw anything. Wayne didn't have an ounce of morality, but there's nothing he hated more than snitches. Only men of loyalty, integrity, and willingness to kill had Wayne's respect. As his legend grew, dealers would avoid driving in flashy cars just to stay off Wayne's radar. Anyone in the drug game knew who Perry was and not to mess with him. Wayne was a bona fide killer by now and had the whole city shook. Wayne understood that public displays of violence command fear like nothing else.
But what he operated on was power. His source of what he did was power. So if I kill you in front of all these guys, everybody here right now is scared of me, right? Mm-hmm. And then I rock you to sleep by smiling at you and telling you all this good stuff and all this and that and the other thing. 2 weeks from now, I'll kill you. And you're scared and you're scared, right? And so who's got the power now? You do. And you know also that I've killed a bunch of other people. So the way I see it, with Wayne, was all about power.
On top of that, he had always had his crew around him. The local legend became scary enough that the residents wouldn't speak a word about him in public. As such, he was near impossible to investigate. DC would be littered with Wayne Perry's victims. The cops couldn't find a trace of evidence for years, or keep a witness alive long enough either. Wayne was smooth too. Legend has it, people would get shot right in the head mid-conversation and no one knew where it came from. Wayne was so feared by now that he'd receive tribute and extort people without having to use any force or threats. Alpo was a hustler from New York, hustling his way to kingpin status starting at age 13 and growing into the largest dealer on the East Coast with connects in the Caribbean. Alberto Martinez set up shop in DC in '89 in a hostile takeover of the crack game. Grateful Edna, DC's Pablo at the time, recently caught a life sentence, and the crown was up for the taking. DC had a reputation for being hostile to its out-of-towners, and Alpo would soon find this out. Naive at first, Alpo plied his trade non-violently in DC until he was shot in the would-be drug deal. An astute businessman, Alpo now understood that only killers got respect in DC, so he sent out his goons to find DC's top savages.
They was killing you, you hear me? So that old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Right. So I quickly seen that this was a place that I could make a lot of of money, but now I got to put my game down. I got to put it down. Although I wasn't trying to bring it down there, but to survive, you had to do it, and you got to let it be known that you're putting it down like that, because that's the only thing they respect. They ain't gonna respect a brother trying to just be smooth and get money.
Right.
You got to put the murder game down. So that's how come I recruited Wayne, because I wasn't ready to put the murder game down all like that. So once I recruited Wayne, they already knew his rep.
According to Alpo, Wayne was locked up and had a $10,000 bond. No one paid because he was too much of a menace, and the city was just glad he was locked up. Alpo bailed him out, and that sealed their friendship. According to Wayne, the two met when Wayne was on his way to kill Alpo, based on a rumor that Alpo had a hit on him. Lucky for Alpo, before Wayne could trace him, a friend convinced him the rumor was fake. Whoever spread the rumor was killed. Alpo and Wayne later met and struck up a bond that would turn up the violence in D.C. Wayne became Alpo's personal hitman in exchange for cash or bricks of coke. Though Alpo did have a reputation for double dealing and people tried to warn Wayne, but their bond was too strong, something Wayne would come to regret. The Martinez organization began its takeover of D.C. corners in brutal fashion.
I mean, this kid had D.C. in fear. I mean, this kid just didn't care. He was murdering everything that was moving.
When Power hooked up with Wayne, that was the best thing that happened to Power.
The average dude getting money down here would have loved to have Wayne on their team.
Extremely territorial and ruthless with snitches or witnesses that moved around in what would be dubbed the murder van, basically a slaughterhouse on wheels. Alpo was an extension of Wayne, and people understood that any slights that Alpo meant a death sentence. Millions were pouring in every day, and they enjoyed the plunder with hotel sprees and orgies all over the town. They moved half a ton of coke in 2 years, almost $70 million worth of coke. Wayne had a team of killers too: Michael Jackson, Big Head Gary, Sheldon Watkins, and Gary Pop were part of Wayne Perry's team. All seasoned killers. Wayne taught them how to aim for the head and leave no trace. Wayne would get furious if they didn't follow his instructions. Evelyn Carter made it onto Wayne's hit list. He gave the job to a new member of the crew, unfamiliar with Wayne's headshot-only policy. On a cold night, Evelyn and a friend left the Keith Sweat concert at Constitution Hall, only 2 blocks from the White House. Wayne's shooter walked up and shot her twice in the chest, fatally nonetheless. Reporting back to Wayne, the shooter described the hit.
Dozier said, well, I shot her. She's dead. He says, but you didn't see her die. You didn't see her, you didn't put a bullet in her head. And he goes, well, no. And Perry got angry and upset with him and started yelling at him. He says, you can't kill anybody unless you shoot him in the head. And he walked up to a man, just a bystander, who they had no connection with, who happened to be talking on a public telephone, and just shot him in the head and said, this is how you kill somebody.
Wayne's final years on the street were marred with increasing paranoia. He would return to the scene of his own murder shortly after the cops to see if he had to kill witnesses too, and anyone asking any personal questions was a cop. When Alpo went down, Wayne trusted him so much that he had him protected in jail. But before being Wayne's friend, partner, or anything else, Alpo was a businessman, so he had already made a business decision, was ready to rat on Wayne or face a death sentence himself. From a jail phone, Alpo had one of Wayne's killers move the murder van with the pretense of hiding it. This was really a setup for the feds to find the van and get incriminating evidence against Wayne. They found multiple blood stains and brain matter from different victims in the van. By '91, the feds had built a strong enough case against Wayne, and for once they managed to keep a witness alive too. Wayne was picked up on a humble charge not long after. He was charged with 8 murders between '89 and '91, a time when D.C. was America's murder capital. The most unexpected candidate for this title, Wayne himself stuck to his code and never snitched on anyone. He dodged the death penalty by pleading guilty on all counts. Wayne admitted to 100 murders during an interview and was even cellmates with John Gotti at one point. Currently, he's locked up in ADX Florence with America's top savages, where he spends 23.5 hours in a cage. He is converted to Islam and is now Nkosi Shaka Zulu El. That's the story of America's top undocumented savage, a testament to the crack era America.